In the previous episodes, we saw Israel became a united nation under King Saul. This unity did not last long before Israel split into a northern and southern kingdom. Today, I only want to make some general remarks about the northern kingdom, which lasted 200 years before being conquered by the Assyrians. Biblical literature tells us that the northern tribes were unhappy with the taxes imposed on them by King Solomon, King David's son. According to biblical literature, Solomon drove great architectural enterprises, which meant high costs and intensive labor. It is thought that Solomon exploited the northern tribes more than the south to get his projects done. After his death, the tribes of the north complained to Solomon's son and successor, Rehoboam. Rehoboam ignored their plight, which caused the northern tribes to choose their own king, Jeroboam, and break away from Israel. Another reason why the split from the United Kingdom happened so easily was because the northerners never truly accepted Yahweh as their only God. The northern tribes lived close to the Canaanites and never completely abandoned the worship of these various gods, including Baal. We find all the different stories about the northern kings in the books of 1 and 2 Kings. Interestingly, these stories are told from a religious perspective. In other words, kings obedient to Yahweh and adopting him as the only God were portrayed as successful, and those guilty of idolatry as failures. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of some of these kings, but the question of whether they were successful remains unanswered, as even these artifacts were documented from the original author's perspective. Omri was one of the successful northern kings. He expanded the kingdom more than any other king before or after him. There are archaeological evidence pointing to the successes he experienced as king of the northern tribes. But because he did not worship Yahweh alone, he received almost no mention in biblical literature. In fact, in 1 Kings 16, verse 25 to 26, the following is said about King Omri. But Omri did what was evil in the Lord's sight, even more than any other of the kings before him. He followed the example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, in all the sins he had committed and led Israel to commit. The people provoked the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols. The northern king we read most about in biblical literature is Ahab, Omri's son and successor, mostly because he was a contemporary of the prophet Elijah, and many stories deal with their conflicts regarding religion and all other things concerning Yahweh. The focus is on his religious shortcomings, according to the biblical authors, and not his military and architectural successes. Interestingly, archaeology has proved that many of the building projects accredited to Solomon can be dated more accurately to the time of Ahab, suggesting that the first extensive Israelite kingdom was that of Omri and his descendants, and not the united kingdom of David and Solomon. The northern kingdom was eventually destroyed at the hands of the Assyrians in 721 BCE. The prophets wanted to show how the North's disobedience to Yahweh was the cause of their demise. We will see in the next episode how much of the writings that originated out of the Northern Kingdom were warnings against disobedience of Yahweh and its possible consequences.